The detection array screamed its warning at 0347 Galactic Standard, and Instructor Vek'thara knew immediately that everything she'd taught her cadets about survival was about to be tested. Gravitational distortion. Sector 799, announced Cadet Chiros, his chitinous fingers trembling over the holographic display. The Kickstall's compound eyes reflected the crimson warning lights that now bathed the observation deck. Magnitude. Instructor, the readings don't make sense. Vek'thara's twin hearts accelerated. In 43 cycles of training the Galactic Coalition's brightest prospects at Forward Station Theta, she'd witnessed nebula collapses, stellar fragmentations, and even a rogue black hole's passage, but she'd never seen her instruments struggle to quantify a phenomenon. The numbers on her screen flickered between impossible values, one moment suggesting a gravitational force equivalent to a neutron star, the next barely registering at all. All cadets to emergency pods, she commanded, her translator rendering her native Sha'ar into the station's common tongue. Protocol 7. Now, 32 cadets from 17 species scrambled toward the evacuation corridor. Vek'thara watched them go with a mentor's pride tinged by dread. Each represented the elite of their worlds, the strongest, smartest, and most promising. The Coalition had invested decades into their training, and now something that defied physics itself was approaching their sector. Instructor, Cadet Myrene's voice crackled through the comm, her Deltharian vocal sacs warbling with panic. The distortion, it's growing. Exponentially. Vek'thara pulled up the tactical display. What had been a localized anomaly 5 minutes ago now stretched across half a light-year, its boundaries expanding like an infection through space-time itself. The phenomenon consumed stellar matter without emission, swallowed light without reflection, and moved with apparent purpose toward the densest regions of inhabited space. Evacuate, she repeated firmly. I'm initiating the Silence Protocol. The Silence Protocol was the Coalition's final desperate measure. A galaxy-wide broadcast that sent every sentient species into hiding. It had been used only twice before, once during the Harvester Plague, and again when the Brex Empire attempted its genocidal expansion. Both times the galaxy had gone dark, civilizations retreating to bunkers and stealth-shielded havens until the threat passed. Her manipulators danced across the command interface, triggering the ancient subroutines. Within moments the protocol's activation would ripple through every Coalition relay, reaching thousands of worlds simultaneously. Populations would flee to prepared shelters, defense fleets would power down to minimal signatures. The lights of galactic civilization would simply Instructor Vek'thara. A new voice, calm and distinctly human, interrupted her concentration. Before you hit that final activation, you might want to see this. She spun toward the observation deck's entrance where a human stood, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okonkwo of the Terran Survey Corps. The human wore the deep blue of her species' exploratory division, her dark skin gleaming with perspiration from what must have been a sprint through the station's corridors. Behind her stood two more humans, a stocky male with cybernetic eyes and a tall androgynous individual whose arms were marked with the bioluminescent tattoos favored by voidwalkers. The evacuation order applies to everyone, Commander, Vek'thara said, though something in the human's expression made her hesitate. Yes, ma'am, I'm aware. Sarah approached the holographic display, her brown eyes scanning the incomprehensible data with unsettling focus. But while your cadets were running for the pods, as they absolutely should, my team did what humans do. We went looking. Vek'thara's spines flared in confusion. Looking, Commander, that anomaly could be anything from a dimensional collapse to a weapon deployed by an unknown hostile force. Standard doctrine is 3,000 years old, interrupted the stocky male. His name badge read Kowalski. His cybernetic eyes whirred softly as they focused on the display, written by species that survived by being careful. Humans got this far by being curious. Recklessly curious, muttered the Void Walker, who Vek'thara now identified as Mex Jong. But effective. Sarah waved her hand through the hologram, isolating one section of data. Look here. These quantum fluctuations. They're not random. There's a pattern. Vek'thara studied the highlighted streams. Beneath the chaos of impossible readings, something did seem to pulse with regularity. A rhythm almost. That could be artifact data. Instrument error caused. It's a message, Sarah stated flatly. Or more precisely, a repeating sequence. Prime numbers up to 22 and 27, then a pause, then what looks like coordinates. A message from something that violates every law of physics we understand. Vek'thara's translator struggled to convey her incredulity. Commander, this is precisely the sort of unknown that the silence protocol was designed for. We hide, we observe, and when we understand it might be too late. Sarah's voice carried an edge now. Instructor, with respect, your species evolved on a world where the biggest predators hunted by sound. You learned survival through stillness. The Kickstall homeworld had venomous flora that killed through contact. Their ancestors survived by avoiding the unknown. The Deltharians evolved in deep oceans where movement attracted leviathans. She gestured toward the evacuation corridor. Every species in the coalition learned that curiosity kills. And humans? Vek'thara asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Humans evolved surrounded by things that wanted to eat us. But we didn't survive by hiding. Sarah's smile was sharp. We survived by being the scariest thing in our neighborhood. We learned to walk toward the monsters, figure out how they worked, and then exploit their weaknesses. Kowalski laughed. A harsh bark of sound. We didn't just fight the lions and bears, we domesticated them. Made them pets and partners. This isn't a predator, Vek'thara insisted, gesturing at the growing anomaly. This is a fundamental breakdown of space-time itself. Or, Zhang said softly, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with their speech. It's something so far beyond our current understanding that it only appears to break our laws. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Any sufficiently alien physics might look like chaos. Sarah pulled up a secondary screen. 3 hours ago, when the anomaly first appeared, I sent a probe. Not away from it, toward it. Vek'thara felt her respiratory spasticles seize. You did what? Hardened sensors, quantum-entangled communications, and enough shielding to survive a supernova's heart. Sarah's fingers flew across the interface. It crossed the anomaly's boundary 47 minutes ago, and it's still transmitting. The observation deck fell silent, except for the soft hum of station systems. Vek'thara stared at the data stream appearing on Sarah's screen. The probe was intact. More than intact. It was gathering coherent readings. Inside the distortion, physics stabilizes, Sarah explained, her voice taking on the clinical tone of someone presenting research findings. The chaos we're detecting is an interface phenomenon, a boundary effect between our space-time and, something else. The probe detected structures, Kowalski added, pulling up imaging data. Artificial ones. Massive ones. Whatever this is, someone built it. The images resolved slowly, fighting through layers of interference. What emerged made Vek'thara's twin hearts stutter. Geometric forms stretched across the void, structures that put even the Coalition's greatest megastructures to shame. They seemed to fold through dimensions the probe's sensors could barely register, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to observe directly. This is first contact, Yang said quietly. With something so far beyond us that they accidentally became a natural disaster just by existing nearby. We need to hide, Vek'thara insisted, though her conviction was wavering. Implement the silence protocol, study this from safety, and let them think we're primitives cowering in our caves. Sarah shook her head. Instructor, I understand your caution. It's kept the Coalition alive for millennia, but humans learned something in our history. When you encounter something vastly more powerful than you, the worst thing you can do is look like prey. So instead we should look like what? Vek'thara demanded. Threats? Partners. Sarah met her gaze steadily. Or at least, beings worth talking to. That signal we detected. It's a greeting. A helicopter reaching out, and the gravitational distortions are probably just side effects of their arrival method. Something their calculations missed because they didn't expect anyone to be here. You can't possibly know that. No, Sarah admitted. I can't. It's a hypothesis based on incomplete data and human instinct. But here's what I do know. In Earth's history, when technologically advanced civilizations encountered less developed ones, The encounters that ended best were the ones where the less developed civilizations showed courage, showed curiosity, showed they were people, not animals. And when did those encounters end badly? Vek'thara asked. Sarah's expression darkened. When the less developed ones hid, when they ran, when they acted like resources to be managed rather than beings to be engaged with. She paused, or when the advanced civilization was actively hostile, in which case hiding didn't save anyone anyway. Vek'thara looked at the evacuation corridor, then at the anomaly consuming her displays, then at these impossible humans with their reckless confidence. Every instinct screamed at her to activate the silence protocol. 43 cycles of training, 3,000 years of coalition doctrine, the wisdom of 17 species. All of it said that survival meant caution, but she thought of Earth's history as she understood it. A species that climbed from prey to apex predator, that looked at the ocean and built boats, that looked at the sky and built rockets, that encountered every natural barrier their world offered, and systematically conquered each one, not through hiding or evolution, but through curiosity and tool use, and sheer stubborn refusal to accept limits. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? Sarah's smile widened. We take one of humanity's long-range explorers, the relentless inquiry, and we fly straight into that anomaly. We find whoever's in those structures and we make contact properly. We show them that the species in this sector are worth their attention. That's insane, Vek'thara said flatly. Yes. All three humans agreed simultaneously. It's also the only interesting option, Yang added. The alternative is cowering while something cosmic happens around us, hoping they either go away or don't notice us. Humans are very bad at hope-based strategies. Kamalski, Rind, we prefer agency. Vek'thara felt something shift in her perception. She'd taught thousands of cadets about survival, about caution, about the protocols that kept the coalition safe. But standing before these humans, she realized there was a difference between survival and living. The coalition had survived for millennia by being careful. Humanity had exploded across its own star system in less than 2 centuries by being bold. Your vessel, she said slowly, is it equipped for diplomatic first contact? It's equipped for anything, Sarah replied. That's why we called it the Relentless Inquiry. We built it to answer questions we didn't even know how to ask yet. How large is your crew? Currently 3, but we've got room for 12. Sarah's eyes glinted with something between hope and challenge. We could use a coalition observer, someone who understands the political implications, someone who's trained in first contact protocols. Vek'thara looked again at her cadets, now safely sealed in emergency pods, ready to be ejected to faraway hiding spots at her command. She thought of them learning her lessons, repeating her cautious wisdom, growing into the next generation of coalition leaders who would prioritize safety above all else. Then she thought of what they would never learn if all they did was hide. I'm assigning myself as coalition liaison, she announced, deactivating the silence protocol's final stage. And I'm bringing Cadet Shiptress. The Kik still have the finest sensory biology in known space. If we're flying into the unknown, I want the best possible perception. Sarah's grin was luminous. Outstanding. Anyone else? Cadet Marine, Vek'thara continued, surprising herself. Neltharians can survive vacuum for short periods and process complex mathematics faster than most computers. And, she paused, scrolling through her roster. Cadet Turvan. Humans might think they're the only reckless species. But Turvan's people, the Reth, evolved as persistence hunters on a high-gravity world. If we're going toward danger, I want someone who understands endurance. 7 total, Kowalski said approvingly. Lucky number for humans. Superstition, Zhang muttered. But they were smiling. Vek'thara activated the intercom. Cadets Rose, Mirin and Torvan, report to Docking Bay 7 immediately. Everyone else, proceed with evacuation protocol. She hesitated, then added, and someone send a message to Coalition Central. Tell them that Forward Station Theto is investigating the anomaly. Tell them that if they don't hear from us in 72 hours, implement the silence protocol then. 72 hours, Sarah repeated. More than enough time to neither make history or become it. They moved quickly then, racing against both the anomaly's growth and Vek'thara's own second thoughts. The three cadets arrived within minutes, each displaying the confusion and terror she'd expected. But when she showed them the probe data, the impossible structures, the signal that might be a greeting, something shifted in their expressions. "We're going toward it?" Shiraz asked, his translator making his chittering sound almost eager. "Humans are," Vek'thara confirmed. "I'm asking if you'll join them." Marine's vocal sacs pulsed. As the ancient Eltharian philosopher Kresna wrote, "The depths held monsters, but also wonders. Only those who descended discovered which was which." Torven simply nodded, her dense muscular frame already oriented toward the docking bay. Better to die in motion than in hiding. The relentless inquiry lived up to its name. Vek'thara had seen human vessels before, utilitarian constructs optimized for efficiency. This ship was different. It bristled with sensors of every conceivable type, its hull covered in modular equipment bays that could be reconfigured in flight. The bridge was less a control room than a scientific workshop, with workstations that could be rapidly repurposed for whatever unknown circumstances might arise. "Welcome aboard," Sarah said as they strapped in. Fair warning, human ship designs prioritize adaptability over comfort. "If you need specific environmental accommodations, we'll manage," Vek'thara interrupted. She was committed now. Discomfort seemed irrelevant. The ship detached smoothly. Its engines, some sort of refined antimatter system that Vek'thara didn't fully understand, pushing them away from the station at accelerations that would have torn apart most Coalition vessels. Humans, she remembered, had evolved on a heavy gravity world and reinforced their biology with cybernetics and genetic modifications. What felt brutal to her was merely normal to them. "Entering anomaly boundary in 90 seconds, Kowalski announced from the pilot's station. "All hands, prepare for unknown effects. If you start seeing things that shouldn't exist, report them immediately." "What kind of things?" Shiraz asked nervously. "If we knew, they wouldn't be unknown," Zhang replied. Vek'thara watched the view screen as they approached the boundary. Up close, the distortion looked less like a tear in space, and more like a membrane, something that divided rather than destroyed. The probe's trajectory was marked on their navigation display, a bright line stabbing into the unknown. 30 seconds, Sarah counted down. "Shields at maximum. Sensors recording. If this goes wrong—" "It won't," Marine interrupted, surprising everyone. "The mathematics don't support destruction. Whatever this is, it's permeable, designed to be crossed." "You calculated that in your head?" Kowalski asked, impressed. "Deltharian neural architecture is parallel processing," Marine explained modestly. "Like having 800 mathematicians working simultaneously." "Fantastic. Hold on to that thought." Sarah gripped her armrests. "Crossing in 3, 2, 1. The universe twisted. Vek'thara felt every molecule of her body simultaneously exist in different locations. She saw the past and future of every possible timeline she might have lived. She tasted colors, heard textures, and experienced emotions that belonged to beings she'd never met. Reality became negotiable, subjective, a consensus that could be withdrawn. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. "Everyone intact?" Sarah's voice cut through the disorientation. Vek'thara checked herself. "All limbs present, hearts beating, consciousness continuous. Intact." Similar confirmations echoed from the others. On the view screen, the universe they'd known was gone, replaced by something that defied description. They floated in a space that obeyed different rules, where light moved in curves, where distances compressed and expanded based on observation, where the structures they'd glimpsed through the probe's sensors now surrounded them in impossible grandeur. "Well," Sarah said quietly, staring at the alien megastructures, "I guess we found something bigger." The structures extended beyond comprehension. Vek'thara's instruments calculated dimensions in light-years, then glitched and recalibrated. The numbers didn't stabilize. They oscillated wildly, as if the constructs themselves existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, their size dependent on how they were observed. "Getting readings that match 17 different types of exotic matter," Kowalski reported, his cybernetic eyes flickering through spectrums invisible to baseline biology. "And, wait, that can't be right. Some of these materials have negative mass, like the Alcubierre drive theory?" Torven asked. The Reth cadet had adapted remarkably well to their crossing, her species' natural resilience extending to existential distortions. Apparently, more like negative mass is their steel, Sarah corrected, pulling up molecular analyses. Whatever built this uses physics we haven't even theorized yet as casual construction materials. The relentless inquiry drifted deeper into the strange space, following the probe's signal. Vek'thara forced herself to focus on procedures, on familiar protocols, even as everything around her screamed impossibility. Attempting standard first contact hailing frequencies, she announced, activating the communication suite. Nothing responded, or rather everything did. The moment her signal broadcast, every surface of every visible structure lit up simultaneously with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate through pure geometry. Mathematical proofs written in light, philosophical concepts expressed as crystalline resonances. A language that bypassed linguistics entirely and spoke directly to consciousness itself. "They're responding," Giros chittered, his compound eyes tracking the cascading patterns. "But I can't translate. It's not language. It's more fundamental." Jiang's bioluminescent tattoos began pulsing in synchronization with the external patterns, their subconscious reaction causing their conscious alarm. "It's bypassing our translators entirely, speaking to something deeper than language centers. I'm getting concepts. Welcome curiosity. Surprise, but not as words, as direct understanding." "They're surprised?" Myrene's vocal sacs warbled thoughtfully. "Interesting. That suggests they didn't expect us, or didn't expect us to approach," Sarah added. She stood moving to the main view screen where the patterns were most intense. "Computer, can you map the geometric sequences to mathematical constants?" The ship's AI worked for several seconds, an eternity for such systems, before responding. "Partial correlation confirmed. Geometric patterns correspond to fundamental constants of this localized space-time. They're teaching us their physics." Vek'thara felt her spines flatten in awe. "An introduction. They're telling us the rules of their reality before attempting deeper communication." "Smart," Torvin grunted. "Like explaining gravity before teaching someone to walk." The patterns evolved, growing more complex. Now they included representations of stars, planets, civilizations. The Coalition's sector of space appeared in miniature, rendered in light forms that captured not just spatial positions but historical trajectories. Vek'thara watched her own species' development from aquatic primitives to spacefaring civilization, compressed into a glowing thread of causality. Then the representation zoomed out, and Vek'thara understood for the first time how small they all were. The Coalition wasn't even a noteworthy cluster in this display. It was background noise, one of VM of similar developments scattered across a galaxy too vast to fully comprehend. In the galaxy itself was merely one mote in a display that encompassed the entire observable universe. "They're showing us scale," Sarah whispered. "Our relative positions in the cosmic hierarchy." "Humbling," Kowalski muttered. But then the display changed again, focusing back on their small ship. The relentless inquiry appeared in the geometric language, and around it a new concept formed. The light patterns conveyed something Vek'thara's translator struggled with: admiration, respect. The geometric forms suggested strength despite size, significance despite scale. The message was clear: you are small, but you came anyway. This matters. "They're impressed we approached," Giros translated, his sensory biology giving him an edge in interpreting the patterns. "Most species run. We came. That's significant to them." Sarah laughed, sound carrying relief and vindication. "Told you, looking like prey never helps." A new structure manifested before them, not built from matter but assembled from probability itself. It solidified from quantum foam into a platform extending from one of the massive constructs, clearly sized for their ship, an invitation, unmistakable in any language. "They want us to dock," Myrene calculated. "The mathematics of that platform are compatible with our physical laws. They've created a bridge between their physics and ours." "Could be a trap," Torvin warned, her predator instincts undimmed. "Could be," Sarah agreed, "but only one way to find out." She glanced at Vek'thara. "Your call, Instructor. You're the Coalition representative here." Vek'thara considered. Every protocol she'd ever learned said to withdraw, observe from safety, and report to higher authorities. But those protocols had been written by species that had never encountered anything like this. Those protocols had kept the Coalition safe but small, surviving but not thriving. And now, faced with beings whose casual construction projects dwarfed galactic civilizations, those protocols seemed inadequate. "Take us in," she decided. "But ready all sensors. If this goes wrong, I want data surviving us." Kowalski guided the ship toward the platform with the precision humans brought to all their technological endeavors. As they approached, Vek'thara noticed that the structure beneath them was actively reconfiguring, its surface adjusting to accommodate not just their ship's physical dimensions, but their biological requirements. Atmospheric seals formed, gravitational fields stabilized to comfortable levels, temperature gradients adjusted to match their vessel's internal climate. "They're customizing the environment for us," Zhang observed, their tattoos now glowing softly in response to the ambient energy fields. "Real-time analysis and adaptation. They're treating this like we'd treat preparing a room for important guests." The ship settled with barely a tremor. For a long moment, nobody moved. They'd come this far on boldness and human confidence, but now, actually here, the magnitude of what they'd done settled over them like a heavy atmosphere. "Well," Sarah finally said, standing and checking her environment suit, "we didn't come all this way to sit in the ship." She looked at Vek'thara. "Standard first contact protocols. Standard protocols assumed we'd meet species within a few centuries of our own development," Vek'thara replied. She pulled up the Coalition's first contact manual on her personal display, its ancient wisdom suddenly seeming quaint. The guidelines suggest establishing common communication, demonstrating peaceful intent and exchanging basic cultural information. "What if they already know everything about our cultures?" Suras asked. "The way they rendered our historical development in those light patterns, they've been watching us." "Then we learn about theirs," Sarah decided. "And we show them who we are through actions, not just observation data." She activated the airlock. "Besides, sitting here accomplishes nothing. Humans don't cross impossible boundaries to then wait for permission." The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond, the platform waited. As Vek'thara stepped out first, as Coalition protocol demanded, she found herself in an environment that seemed custom-designed to overwhelm all her senses simultaneously, while keeping her perfectly comfortable. The air was precisely suited to her respiratory needs, yet she could see it shifting in localized pockets where each of her companions stepped, accommodating Zeras's methane preference, Torvin's high oxygen requirements, and the human's baseline Earth-normal atmosphere. The platform stretched ahead, its surface simultaneously solid and permeable, opaque and transparent. In the distance, though distance itself seemed negotiable here, structures rose that dwarfed any engineering Vek'thara had encountered. They looked organic despite being clearly artificial, as if whoever built them hadn't distinguished between growing and constructing. And standing, or rather existing in the center of the platform, was something that Vek'thara's mind refused to fully process. Her visual cortex interpreted it differently with each glance. First as a pillar of crystallized light, then as a flowing form of liquid geometry, then as something that occupied more dimensions than she possessed the neurology to comprehend. Her translator, designed to handle any known linguistic structure, remained utterly silent. Sarah stepped forward. To Vek'thara's surprise, the human didn't hesitate, didn't show fear. She simply approached the impossible being with the same straightforward confidence she'd shown in every interaction. "Hello," Sarah said in clear, unmodified English. "We received your signal. We came to meet you." The entity, and Vek'thara was now certain it was a distinct being rather than just part of the structure, shifted. Reality adjusted around it, and suddenly communication became possible, not through language, but through a direct transfer of meaning that bypassed the need for symbolic representation entirely. Curious ones came the concept, flooding into Vek'thara's consciousness. "Of all species present when we emerged, only you approached. This is unprecedented in 84-7 prior emergences. You've done this before?" Kowalski asked, his augmented brain processing the communication method faster than his companions. "Emerged into occupied space. We travel. Your localized spacetime is new to us. We analyze. We learn. Typically, developing civilizations perceive our arrival as catastrophe and retreat. You perceived it as invitation. Why?" Sarah smiled. Because humans learned a long time ago that the only way to understand the universe is to walk toward the things that scare us. We're naturally curious, dangerously so. A dangerous curiosity. The concept carried undertones of approval. This is valuable, rare. We have encountered thousands of spacefaring species. Most follow one of 7 development paths. You followed none of them. Vek'thara found her voice, or rather her thoughts, since speech seemed to be unnecessary. They evolved as both predator and prey, developed complex social structures based on cooperation and competition simultaneously, and reached spaceflight through what most coalition species consider reckless risk-taking. Fascinating, the being's attention turned fully to the 3 humans. You sacrifice safety for knowledge. Knowledge is safety, Jiang replied, their tattoos pulsing with their emotion. Long-term. You can't hide from what you don't understand, but if you understand it, you can predict it, work with it, maybe even control it. Philosophy of the bold. The entity seemed to consider this. In our observations, such philosophy typically leads to extinction within 200,000 rotations of homeworld primary. Your species has survived. More, it has expanded aggressively. Why have you not destroyed yourselves? We came close, Sarah admitted frankly. Multiple times. Nuclear weapons, biowarfare, AI existential risks, climate collapse. We nearly failed at each threshold. But we survived because she paused, choosing her thoughts carefully. Because humans are as good at cooperation as we are at competition. We're dangerous individually, but we're also pack animals. We learned to channel our aggressive curiosity through collective structures. Science, democracy, the global community. You weaponized your curiosity through collaboration. The concept carried a sense of revelation. This combination is unique in our catalog. Most bold species lack cooperative structures. Most cooperative species lack boldness. You possess both. Mireen spoke up, her mathematical mind translating complex ideas into pure logic. Is that why you're interested in us specifically? Because we represent an unusual development path. Interested. Yes, but more. The entity shifted, and with it the entire platform reconfigured. Now they stood in what appeared to be an observation chamber, surrounded by displays showing countless star systems. We travel to understand. We observe universes, dimensions, timelines. We seek patterns that illuminate fundamental truth. Your approach, 7 beings from 6 species, acting against all survival instinct to pursue knowledge. This is a pattern we have not encountered. Jarrus's chittering took on an excited tone. Your researchers, explorers, like us, just on an incomprehensibly larger scale, analogy accepted. The being seemed pleased by this understanding. We are to your explorers as your explorers are to single-celled organisms in your biology. Difference of scale, but commonality of purpose. Torvan, who had been silent, spoke with her typical bluntness. What do you want from us? Direct, Queeg. Efficient. The entity's approval was palpable. We want nothing, but we offer opportunity. Your bold approach suggests capacity for rapid advancement. We observe many species who stagnate, content with survival. You seek more. We can provide tools for seeking. Vek'thara felt alarm pulse through her. Tools? What kind of tools? Suddenly they were somewhere else entirely. The observation chamber had become a library, but not one containing books or data storage. This library stored concepts directly, ideas made tangible, knowledge crystallized into accessible forms. Vek'thara could sense the information surrounding her, principles of faster-than-light travel that didn't rely on the Coalition's clumsy wormhole generators, methods for manipulating matter at the quantum level, techniques for interfacing directly with space-time itself. This is... Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. This is everything, centuries of advancement compressed into this, not compressed. Available. Your species, all your species, stand at threshold. You can continue slow development, following safe paths, or you can accelerate, accepting risk for progress. Most choose safety. We offer you There's a catch, Kowalski said flatly. His cybernetic eyes were scanning the library's contents with increasing alarm. There's always a catch. Knowledge this advanced, we could destroy ourselves with it. Accurate assessment. The entity displayed no deception. This knowledge, misapplied, could end your civilizations within single generation. Many species have self-terminated through premature advancement. This is why we observe but typically do not interfere. But you're interfering now, Vek'thara said. Why? Because you came. The concept was simple but profound. In 8047 emergences, only you approached. This suggests capacity for handling consequences. Species who hide cannot be trusted with power. Species who attack cannot be trusted with wisdom. Species who approach with curiosity and courage, perhaps they can be trusted with both. Sarah looked at Vek'thara, and in that moment the instructor saw the full weight of what they'd stumbled into. This wasn't just first contact. This was a test, and by approaching when every instinct said to hide, they'd passed or at least earned the right to attempt the next level. We need to understand something, Vek'thara said, carefully. This knowledge, is it a gift? Alone? Do you expect anything in return? We expect nothing. We offer freely, but understand knowledge creates obligation, not to us but to principle. If you take this knowledge, you become responsible for using it wisely. A failure affects not just your species but potentially many others. This is why most decline. Most? Marian's mathematical mind latched onto the implication. Others have been offered this choice, 4 times in past 17 million rotations. Twice, species declined, choosing gradual development. Once, species accepted, used knowledge foolishly, destroyed themselves and 7 neighboring civilizations. Once, species accepted, used knowledge wisely, now exist as interdimensional collective exploring parallel timelines. The chamber fell silent as they processed this. The stakes were existential, not just for themselves but for everyone they knew. One wrong choice, one moment of hubris or carelessness, and they could doom billions. We need to consult with our governments, Vek'thara said, falling back on protocol even as she knew how inadequate it was. The Coalition Council, Earth's governing bodies. This decision is too large for 7 individuals. Time is constrained, the entity acknowledged. We remain in this localized space-time for 73 more of your planetary rotations. After we continue journey, decision must be made before departure. Understand, we offer once, decline an opportunity, close, accept, and path changes forever. Torvald's dense muscles tensed. And if we take time to decide but then want to decline, you'll just leave. No consequences. Correct. Your choice freely made. We are researchers, not conquerors. We do not impose. We offer, observe, learn. Your decision teaches us about your capacity for wisdom under pressure. All outcomes valuable to our research. Great, Kowalski muttered. We're a science experiment. You are always science experiment. The entity's tone, if thought concepts could have tone, carried dry humor. Existence itself is continuous experimentation. We merely make this Sarah turned to Vek'thara. Instructor, your call. You're the ranking coalition authority here. Vek'thara felt the weight of civilizations resting on her next words. She thought of her 43 cycles training cadets, teaching them caution and survival. She thought of the coalition's 3,000-year history of careful, gradual progress. She thought of humanity's explosive 2-century expansion, powered by exactly the kind of bold risk-taking that would scandalize most coalition species. We need to bring this to our leaders, she decided. But we do it now. Commander Okonkwo, can your ship's communications reach both Coalition Central and Earth's Governing Council? Through quantum entanglement, yes, Sarah confirmed. We can have real-time conferences with both within the hour. Acceptable. The entity agreed. We will maintain platform during deliberations, take time needed. But remember, 73 rotations, then we depart. Use time wisely. The being faded, not disappearing but rather diffusing, its consciousness distributing across the vast structure around them. Vek'thara and her companions were alone on the platform, surrounded by a library of potentially civilization-ending knowledge. This is insane, Zeros chittered. We came for first contact and walked into a cosmic trial. Not a trial, Zhang corrected softly. An offer. One made because we were brave enough or stupid enough to approach when we should have run. Both, probably, Sarah said with a wry smile. Humans specialize in that particular combination. They returned to the relentless inquiry, and over the next 12 hours, engaged in the most important diplomatic conferences in galactic history. Coalition Central responded with predictable alarm, demanding Vek'thara immediately invoke the silence protocol and withdraw. Earth's council was divided, with scientific factions urging acceptance and military branches counseling extreme caution. But as arguments raged and politicians postured, Vek'thara found herself watching her 3 cadets. Xeros, whose species had evolved to avoid all unknown dangers. Marine, whose people had learned to hide from leviathans in ocean depths. Torven, whose ancestors survived by outlasting rather than confronting threats. All of them shaped by evolutionary pressures toward caution. And yet all 3 had volunteered to fly into the unknown, had crossed the boundary when they could have fled, had stood before incomprehensible beings and held their ground. Commander Okonkwo, Vek'thara said, interrupting a particularly heated exchange between Earth and Coalition representatives. Tell me honestly, if this decision were yours alone, if you had absolute authority to accept or decline, what would you choose? Sarah looked at her for a long moment. I'd accept, she said finally, not because I'm certain we can handle it, but because I'm certain that hiding from it won't make us safer. Humans didn't reach the stars by playing it safe. We got here by taking exactly these kinds of risks, calculated, terrifying, potentially catastrophic risks, and then working our asses off to make sure they paid off instead of killing us. That's a very human perspective, Vek'thara observed. Yes, Sarah agreed. But you asked for honesty, and that's my honest answer. Though, she paused, I'll note that you crossed that boundary with us. You brought cadets into unknown danger because you thought the opportunity justified the risk. That's not a very Coalition thing to do, Instructor. Vek'thara felt her spines ripple with something that might have been embarrassment or might have been pride. No, she admitted. It was. The deliberations continued. Earth's scientific community began analyzing the implications, their models suggesting both extraordinary potential and catastrophic risk. Coalition military analysts ran scenarios, most of which ended in disaster. Politicians maneuvered, trying to position themselves advantageously regardless of the final decision. But in the end, after 71 hours of continuous negotiation, argument, and analysis, a consensus emerged. Not because everyone agreed, but because everyone recognized that inaction was itself a choice with consequences. The Coalition Council voted to accept on the condition that knowledge distribution would be carefully controlled, released gradually, and monitored constantly. Earth's governing bodies reached similar conclusions, though with typical human impatience to begin implementation immediately. Vek'thara stood on the platform once more, her 6 companions beside her. The entity had reconstituted, waiting patiently for their decision. We accept, Vek'thara announced, her translator carrying her words into the conceptual communication medium. On behalf of the Coalition and humanity, we accept your offer of knowledge. We understand the risks. We accept the responsibility. Accepted. The entity pulsed with satisfaction. Understand, this changes everything. Your species will diverge from safe development paths. You will face challenges that test your wisdom, your cooperation, your capacity for growth. Many opportunities will emerge, many dangers will arise, but you will not face them blind. The library transformed, its contents beginning to flow toward them. Not as physical transfer, but as integration. Knowledge seeding itself into their understanding in ways that would take years to fully comprehend. One final gift, the entity announced. For your courage in approaching when you should have hid, for your wisdom in consulting before deciding, for your honesty in acknowledging risk. We offer perspective. Suddenly they were elsewhere, floating in a void that existed outside normal space-time. Before them the universe sprawled in its entirety, not as they saw it through telescopes, but as it truly was, every dimension revealed, every possibility visible. They saw their galaxy as one of trillions, saw the Coalition as an infant civilization taking its first steps, saw humanity as a spark of aggressive curiosity just beginning to burn. But they also saw potential paths forward, where their species thrived, grew, evolved into something magnificent. paths where they joined other ascended civilizations in exploring realities beyond their current comprehension. Paths where they became researchers themselves, traveling between universes to observe and learn and offer knowledge to younger species. This is possible. The entity showed them. If you choose wisdom, if you maintain courage, if you balance boldness with caution, curiosity with respect, power with responsibility, then they were back, standing on the platform, the impossible vision fading but not forgotten. The entity was already beginning to diffuse again, its work complete. Go now, came the final message. Use knowledge well, we will observe your development with interest. Perhaps in future emergence you will approach us not as students but as peers. With that, the entity dissolved entirely. The platform beneath them began to deconstruct, gracefully returning them to their ship. As the relentless inquiry lifted away back toward the boundary and the universe they knew, Vek'thara looked at her companions. We just changed the course of galactic history, she said softly. We came looking for something bigger, Sarah replied, gazing at the dissolving structures. And we found something so much bigger that we don't even have words for it yet. The coalition will never be the same. Duras observed. 3,000 years of cautious progress, overturned in 72 hours. Good, Torvin grunted. Survival is necessary, but thriving is better. As they crossed back through the boundary, the transition easier now, almost welcoming, and emerged into normal space, they found forward station Theta exactly where they'd left it. To the station only 73 hours had passed. To the 7 explorers it felt like they'd aged years. Vek'thara's communicator immediately exploded with messages from Coalition Central, Earth's governments, and what seemed like every research institution in known space. The flood of demands, questions and requests was overwhelming, but before dealing with any of it, before beginning the massive task of integrating and distributing the knowledge they'd been given, Vek'thara activated the station-wide intercom. Attention all cadets, she announced. Resume normal training operations. But understand everything you thought you knew about safe development, about cautious progress, about hiding from the unknown. Those lessons are no longer sufficient. We've just learned that survival isn't enough. Thriving requires boldness. Understanding requires courage. And sometimes, the best way to face the impossible is to walk straight toward it and ask questions. She ended the transmission and turned to find Sarah smiling at her. Quite a speech, instructor. I learned it from humans, Vek'thara replied. You terrible, wonderful, reckless species. Sarah laughed. Wait until you see what we do with this new knowledge. You haven't seen reckless yet, and despite everything, despite the fear, the risk, the massive responsibility they'd just accepted, Vek'thara found herself laughing too, because somewhere in the past 72 hours while cadets had hidden and humans had gone looking, she'd learned something fundamental about the universe. The biggest discoveries come to those brave enough to seek them. The greatest advances belong to species willing to risk everything for knowledge. And sometimes, the difference between merely surviving and truly living is the courage to walk toward the unknown instead of away from it. As the relentless inquiry docked and they prepared to begin the enormous task ahead, Vek'thara looked out at the stars, the same stars she'd observed for 43 cycles. But now seeing them differently, not as a dangerous void to be carefully navigated, but as a frontier waiting to be explored by those bold enough to try. Humanity had taught the galaxy an important lesson. When faced with the unknown, don't hide. Don't run. Ask questions, seek answers, go looking for something bigger, and sometimes you might actually find it.